Hey everybody, just wait a few minutes here and see if some people join in. Hope everyone's doing well, staying safe. Not sure if you're quarantined or not, but hopefully you're following all the PSA health instructions. Wash your hands. Alrighty, think we'll get started. Just make sure everything's going okay here. Keep an eye on things. Hey everyone, John here. I offer solutions, real estate services, talking about down payments for your rent own and how you can get into home ownership today, even if the bank says no. Now, in all my years doing rent own, probably one of the most common questions I get, and probably one of the most asked questions I get all the time is for people who are looking to get into a rent own is how much of a down payment do I need to get into a rent own? And my answer was always the same to every single person. It depends. Kind of a non-answer, but it's exactly that. It really does depend on the rent own itself. And I'll show you why in just a few minutes. Now, before we get started on the video on how much of a down payment you need on a rent own, if you're really serious about getting into a home today and the bank has turned you down from a mortgage, then maybe you'd like us to help you out, find you a home, set up and structure your rent own for success. If that sounds good to you, then head over to rtobuyer.com. Again, that's rtobuyer.com. Head over to the webpage, fill in the form, and we'll see if we can help you out. No guarantees, but we'll see what we can do. All right, so let's get started. So when it actually comes to qualifying for a bank mortgage, qualifying for a traditional mortgage, we all know that the bank requires a minimum of 10% or a minimum of 5% down in the current economic times. But a huge question I keep getting, and what holds a lot of people back from getting into a home today, is what can they do if they don't have a 5% down payment, which is in the rent-own world, a lot of people. And you know what? It's really a fair question. And I get it all the time because people are worried about, either not having enough money. They want to get into a home, but they're worried because they don't have enough money or they don't have any money, or they're just don't think they're ever going to be able to get into a home. And it really makes sense. But here's the thing. You can get into a home today even if you don't have any money at all. And I'm going to show you how. So I'm going to walk you through 4 different options of how you can get into a home now for as little as $0 down, all the way up to being able to actually pick out a home that's for sale on the market and have an investor buy it for you. And I'll walk you through everything in between as well. So the very first one I mentioned, and I'm sure a lot of people's ears picked up, is getting in for $0 down. Well, to be fair, in actuality, you may have $0 cash down, but I don't believe that there's anybody out there that will actually let you get into a home today with the hopes of buying it in the future for $0 down. And I don't even believe that you can do it yourself. Well, I know you can't do it yourself for $0 down. But what I mean by getting in for zero cash down is a little bit different, because people have assets that maybe they've accumulated over time that actually have value, and maybe your money is tied up in these assets, and things like, we'll say, what I call toys, ATVs, snowmobiles, motorhomes, boats, things to that nature, maybe sports card collections. Maybe there's something that you actually have that has value. You just don't have actually have the cash today. So you're still able to get in with $0 cash today, but you have something of value. Now, typically the way that would work is if you're coming to like for myself, for my rent-own business, and you say, well, John, I don't have any cash, but I have this vehicle here and I believe it's worth $12,000. So I'd like to get into a rent-own. I'll just give you the car and we'll use that as my down payment for $12,000. I'll say, well, that all sounds good. However, I'm not in the car auto business, and what you're doing is you're just pushing a problem onto me, because you're giving me a car that I don't want, I don't need, and then I have to turn around and try to sell the car, and you want me to take the car at at full retail value and then try to sell it, not knowing if I'll ever get that same value out of it. So we do actually take things on trade in exchange for the rent-owned down payment. However, just like on all those shows, the Pawn Stars, we don't take it at what the retail value is. We would take it at more of a wholesale value and give you credit for the wholesale value. If you want credit for the retail value, then I recommend you go out and you sell it yourself, get the cash, get the $12,000, get somebody to buy it, and then come back with the $12,000 cash. But if you just want to sign your vehicle over to me, I'm not going to give you a $12,000 value, because now I have a headache that I have to deal with, getting rid of the car, advertising it, marketing, hoping it sells for $12,000, but not knowing if it's going to. So I'm going to be more like the Pawn Stars, and I'm going to give you a value that enables me to actually make money for my time and effort and all the work that I have to put in to actually going out and selling the car. Because if it was just that easy to sell a car for $12,000, well, you would be doing it. But no, you're asking me to do it, so it's just not that easy. So maybe I would give you, I'm just making up numbers, maybe I would give you $8,000 in exchange. You think it's worth $12,000? I don't know, but I'm willing to exchange it for $8,000 in hopes that I would turn around and in a few months, or whatever time frame, that I would actually be able to sell it and get my $8,000 plus some extra for my time and effort. So you can get in with $0 cash down. However, you have to have something of value to trade, but you're not going to get full retail trade. You're going to get probably wholesale trade if you're dealing with a rent-to-own business. Okay, so that's the very first one, to get in for $0 cash down. Now the second one is you're able to get in with actually $100 cash down. That's all you need, is $100 cash down. And I've been successfully doing this aspect of rent-own since 2009. This is how I actually go out and get homes to turn them into rent-owns, and then I help people get into the home. So I'll go out and I'll track the homeowner, I'll present and negotiate on the price and terms, and then I'll set up and structure a rent-to-own. And I do that, and I acquire the homes for $100 cash down. So if you're limited in the amount of down payment you have, then this may be an option for you. It's the do-it-yourself option, where you would go out and you would attract the homeowner, negotiate, present and negotiate, and then set up and structure your rent-to-own. And you can get those properties for $100 down. And I do it all the time. And I am an introvert who does not like to negotiate, or I do not like sales. I avoid conflict at all times. So if I can do it, it's that old adage, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And seriously, anybody can do it, because I am not a negotiator. I am not a salesperson, but I can go out and just present the information to the owner, show them how much they'll make more, how much more money they'll make working with me. And I still get the home at a good price, that I'm actually able to be a middleman and deal with the tenant buyers that want to get into the home. So number two, $100 down, you can actually do this yourself. You don't need somebody like me. You can actually cut out the middleman altogether and go out and get yourself a home for $100 down. Now, that being said, remember, the rent-own is just a financing mechanism that gives you time to be able to qualify for a traditional mortgage. So during that rent-own term, let's say 3 years, whatever it is, you still, by the end of that 3 years, you still need to come up with the 5% down the bank requires. So that means that you're going to have to figure out how much every single month that you're going to need to save during that term to qualify for a traditional mortgage. Let's say, for example, the property you're getting into is $350,000. Well, 5% of $350,000 is $17,500. So if you're in a 36-month term, if you take 17,000 divided by 36 months, I already did this earlier, I think it works out to be just under $500 a month. So you would need to make sure that you're putting $500 a month away, so that at the end of the rent-own term, you had your 5% down. So again, this is the do-it-yourself option. This is the option that I use all the time for helping people just like yourself get into a rent-own. I negotiate with a homeowner. I take it over for $100 down, and then I have typically 3 years, or whatever the term is you agreed upon, but 3 years typically for me, to structure the rent own. And then I make sure I put somebody in and we lay out a plan, a strategy that's going to make sure they have the 5% down. Okay, so that's the second option. The first one, you can get in for zero cash, but you need something to trade. The second one, you can actually get in for just $100 cash, but you need to do it yourself. You need to do the whole rent own yourself. Okay, so I have resources available. I consult with people on a regular basis that want to do it yourself. So if that's the case, you can just leave a comment, and I can follow up with you. Now, the third option for getting into rent own, this is the most common that I use because I acquire homes from homeowners on a regular basis without having a tenant buyer already set in place. So I'll go out and I'll get the home for $100 down with the homeowner. But then when I attract tenant buyers to go into the property, I require that they have a minimum of 3% down. And again, to answer the question, how much of a down payment do I need? When I say 3%, that means nothing until you actually know the price of the home. So, for example, if we use our example home again of $350,000, 3% of that is $10,500. So on that particular home, you would need a minimum of $10,500 to get into the property before I let you into the property. And that would be your option. The $10,500 is technically called your option consideration, but in layman's terms, everyone just calls it a down payment. Okay. So 3% is typically what, if a homeowner is structuring the rent own themselves, or a company like myself has a property already under contract and we're looking to put a tenant buyer in, typically we're looking for someone to have a minimum of 3% down payment of whatever the purchase price of the home is. Again, $350,000 example, you're going to need to come in with at least $10,500 down for the option consideration. Now remember, I don't know if you watch any of the previous videos, but there's two separate payments. There's two separate agreements. There's the option and there's the lease. So the down payment is the option payment. Okay, you still would need to come up with the first month's rent and security deposit, whatever the normal rent would require in your province. Okay, but the down payment itself, the initial option, 3% is typically on the majority of the properties I deal with, because I get the property first. That's what I require from a tenant buyer. Now, the fourth option is when you have a minimum of 5% down already. You already have a full down payment. Maybe the bank has turned you down because you have some blemishes on your credit that need to get fixed up. Maybe you're self-employed, which I work with a lot of self-employed individuals, and the way that they pay themselves out of their corporation and the way that they report their taxes, it looks like they don't technically make much money, but their companies could be making a lot of money, or maybe they're making their money in dividends versus salaries, and the way that it's reported, the bank doesn't like that. They want to see salary, like what's on box 150, I believe. So it's just the way it's structured. So I deal with a lot of people that have money, have good jobs, steady income, or they're self-employed. They have the 5% down, but for whatever reason, the bank is just not giving them a traditional mortgage. Usually it's their credit, or they just don't report enough income because of their company. So for these individuals, and they want to actually pick out their own home. They want us to buy a home for them that they specifically pick out that's for sale. And that's okay, provided we know that they have the money. They have the down payment, they have a good steady job or company, and money is not the issue. So we will typically find an investor to go out, and once they pick out a home with our realtor, we'll have an investor purchase that home. Now, for an investor to purchase a home on somebody's behalf, that investor needs to have a minimum 20% down, if not 35% down. So if you're asking us to go out and buy a $400,000 home, the investor needs to have minimum $80,000 cash to buy that home, so you can actually move in it and we can structure a rent own. So that's a lot to ask of an investor, a lot of cash to ask of an investor. And most of our investors are people just like you that but they just have a little bit extra cash. Maybe you have extra cash too, but they have the ability to actually purchase a home. They're not millionaires by any means. They're just regular people that have some cash or RRSPs that they want to use to invest in real estate. So if you have a 5% down and you want us to find an investor to actually go and find a home for you, then you can do that as well. And you can actually do that on your own as well. You just find an investor that's willing to buy a home. But they're typically going to want to make sure you have some skin in the game. So that's the fourth option, is 5% down, at minimum of 5% down. So I have a story about trading. Yeah, I want to follow up with a story about trading to get into a house here in just a minute. But before I forget, if you're really serious about getting into a home today and the bank has said no, and you'd like us to either help you set it up and get you into a rent-to-own or help you find a home and structure the rent-to-own for your success, if all that sounds good, then head over to rtobuyer.com. That's rtobuyer.com, and we'll do our best to help you out. If you qualify for one of our programs, we'll do everything we can to help you out get into a home today. Okay. I don't know if you remember the story about the individual from Canada who started with a paperclip and traded his way all the way up, and he actually ended up trading a paperclip for a house. Now, it wasn't a direct trade that, here, Mr. Homeowner, here's a paperclip, you get the house. But he was able to, it was back in 2005, 2006. I believe the person's name was Kyle McDonald. He's Canadian. And he started with a paperclip, and I think he traded the paperclip for a pen. And then the pen, he went to a doorknob and then a camping stove. And then just kept going up. And he ended up with a generator and then a skidoo, a recording contract, ended up with a free month's rent in Arizona, then traded that for a day with Alice Cooper, traded that for some memorabilia from Kiss, and that got traded for a part in a movie, which eventually got traded for a house in Saskatchewan. So what I'm trying to say is you can get into a home with actually $0 cash. You just need to have something of value that the other person deems that they see value in and trade it for them. Now, in Kyle's case, it took a lot of trades to find something of value to trade for the home. But you may have something that's laying around, like I said, some toys, ATVs, boats, campers, maybe you have sports card collection, jewelry, things like that, that if you don't actually have the cash, you could use those items and either sell it or trade it in for the down payment to get into your rent-own home. Okay. By the way, if you do have a down payment saved up and you have a good steady job and you're really serious about getting into a home today, but the bank has said no, then maybe you'd like us to help you out. If you do, head over to rtobuyer.com. Again, that's rtobuyer.com, and we'll do our best to help you out. Like I said, there's no guarantees. If you qualify for a program, we'll definitely help you out and try to get you into a home. All right, so to summarize this particular video, to get into a home, there's 4 options that we have when it comes to the down payment that you need. Well, you have 4 options available to you when it comes to the down payment. First one is no money, no cash down at all. However, that has a caveat, and the caveat is you must have something of value that the owner or the rent-own company wants in exchange for the credit for the down payment. So there has to be a transaction there of some kind, but in actuality, you can get in for $0 cash. That's the first option. The second option is you can get in for $100 cash, and that is the do-it-yourself option where you go out and attract a homeowner who is willing to turn their home into rent-own. You then present and negotiate the opportunity to them, and then you'd set up and structure your own rent-own for yourself directly with the homeowner, and all you need is the $100 to actually make the contracts valid. You have to make the contracts valid. There has to be an exchange of dollar amount. So in order to do that, typically we give the homeowner $100 in exchange for the option contracts. So that's the second option you have. You can get in for $100 down if you're willing to do the work yourself and structure your own rent to own. The third one, which is the most common, is you can get in for 3% down. Now it's 3% of the purchase price of the home. So you'd have to do a little bit of math. The home is worth $300,000. 3% of that is $9,000 I would need down. Or the home is worth $400,000. Well, 3% of that is $12,000 I'd need down. So typically, the properties that are being marketed for rent to own, that where the homeowner or the tenant or the rent to own company already has them, they will set the minimum standard for the down payment, which is typically 3% of the purchase price of the home. So that's the third option you have when it comes to how much down payment. And the fourth one, if you actually have the cash and you want to pick out your own home that's for sale in the market and have an investor go purchase it for you, they're going to want you to have a minimum of 5% down, typically more, because more and more we're getting more, the investors are getting more and more stringent in who they want to deal with. They want to deal with people who have actually more money. So, but minimum requirement is 5% down. You can pick out the home that's for sale in the market. The investor will go and purchase it for you. And then a rent to own gets structured. So those are the four options you have available to you when it comes to down payment for a rent to own. Okay. So when it comes to getting into home ownership, when you don't qualify for a mortgage today, like I said, there's three big things that we always do and you always need to do. The first is you need to attract a homeowner or an individual who's willing to turn the home into a rent to own or buy a home for you specifically for rent to own. Then you need to, second thing, you need to negotiate a fair price and terms on what that rent to own is going to look like. And third, you need to set up and structure the rent to own for success, set it up properly. So to summarize today, and talking about how much of a down payment you need for rent to own. And here's the thing. You don't even need to have any money at all or no cash at all. And don't think that you can't get into a home, because you can. You can get in for zero cash, or you can get in for only $100 down, or 3% or 5%. But bottom line is you can get into a home today, provided you have a steady job and income to support the mortgage of the property when it comes time to qualify. So the down payment is really dependent upon how much do you want to put down. So if you don't have the 3% down, you still want to get into a home, well, you have the do-it-yourself option where you can find a homeowner yourself and get in for $100 down. But there are options available to you. Okay, so there's something out there for everyone, provided you have enough household income to be able to support a mortgage and qualify for a mortgage when the time comes with the bank. Okay, so like I said, it's just a matter of how much money you have and whether you want to do it yourself or work with a rent-to-own company. All right, so I want to thank everybody so much for joining me today. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments section and we'll follow up with you at some time in the near future. We're very good about getting back to any questions. And just one more time before I go, if you have a down payment saved up, if it's a good steady job and you're serious about getting into a home, but the bank has said no, then maybe you'd like some help, then head over to rtobuyer.com. That's rtobuyer.com, and we can definitely look at helping you out if you qualify for a program. Or if you want to do it yourself and you need some guidance, you want somebody to consult with respect to the whole process, the attraction, the negotiations, the setup and the structure, the contracts, just go to rtobuyer.com, fill in the form, and let us know. All right. Thank you very much for joining me, and hope everyone has a safe and pleasant day. All right. Take care.